You're listening to the Ketovangelist podcast. We're powered by ketones and carbs are for suckers. My name is Brian Williamson, owner of ketovangelist.com, a site dedicated to all things ketogenic. Each week on this podcast, we talk about food, nutrition, fitness, exercise. Sometimes there's a math quiz. I won't say when. Sometimes I talk about this stuff all by my lonesome, and sometimes, like today, I have a really interesting guest join me. If you'd like to learn more about the ketogenic diet and lifestyle, I would encourage you to go to ketovangelist.com. And on the front page there, you'll see a really neat way to just sign up for our newsletter, and you'll get in return one really, really neato book about all the foods you can eat and still stay ketogenic. It's what the kids call win, win, win. All right, we got a great show coming at you today, so sit tight, get ready for some goodness. All right. Hello, everyone. This is Brian. Do I sound a little congested? You know why that is? Because I'm a little congested. I have to admit, I'm getting over a bit of a cold, maybe a flu, maybe a clue. I don't know. We'll combine the two. I'm not sure. And so I'm a little stuffed up. So you'll have to apologize. And I may be coughing. So you're welcome. Anyway, let's get back to why we're here. We have a great show today, and joining us is I think one of the things that you guys know about me is I really like to talk about people who go against the grain. Maybe it's just because my personality is such that it is. So anytime I get a chance to talk to a no kidding certified nutritionist who's got a master's degree in nutrition, also maybe in psychology too. It's something I want to, she's the person I want to talk to. So I'd like to take a second to allow Carole Freeman to introduce herself. Hello, Carole.
Hi, Brian. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much.
So where are you coming to us from today?
I am, well, not when people, I was going to say I'm live, but not when people listen to this won't be live. But I'm in Redmond, Washington, which is just east of Seattle area. Out here in Bill Gates territory.
The audio sounds really, really bad. I don't know what happened. Yeah, I don't know what happened, but before I went live, we sounded fine, and now it sounds like you're. It just sounds like you're like a Cylon.
No. Should I try to get the mic to go up again, or let's see.
Possible, maybe.
I found that button before. Let's see. Okay, is that any different?
Oh, that's much better.
Okay, that's through the mic now. Good. Okay.
All right. So then what I'll do is I'll go back and edit this, and what we'll take it is, as I just said, say hi, Carole. All right. So I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself.
Okay. Hi, Brian. Wait, sorry. Do you want me to actually say my background now, or just like we did before, where it's just a quick hi?
Just like before, quick hi. I'll ask you where you're coming from, and then I'll ask you to talk about your background.
Okay. All right. Hi, Brian. I'm so excited to be here. I'm really thrilled, and thank you so much for asking me to come on.
Well, I appreciate you coming on the show. And where are you talking to us today from?
I am out here in Redmond, Washington, just east of the Seattle area, Bill Gates territory, pretty much. And I want to apologize on behalf of the Seahawks. I know we got pretty close, and I know you're a fan, but you know, there's always next year.
Yeah, well, so I'm a fan of two professional football teams. One of them is the Seattle Seahawks. The other is the Chicago Bears. So the mantra of "there's always next year" is very close to my heart.
That's the Bears for sure, right?
So anyway, said all that. Yes, it was a close year. We'll get them next year. Everything's good. All right. So what I don't want to do is I don't want to butcher your bona fides. So take a few minutes, if you would, and tell everyone a little bit about your history, your education, where you're coming to us from, how you got into nutrition, that sort of thing. So take it away.
Yeah, well, I have several degrees. So I have a bachelor's in nutrition, which is just kind of boring. I also have a double master's, which is in clinical nutrition and as well as clinical health psychology, which is a fancy way of saying mental health therapist or counselor.
Okay.
So I have that um, double master's degree, and it's from a university called Bastyr. It's a private accredited school that's just north of Seattle up here.
Okay.
And it's a place where they train a lot of the naturopathic doctors. So if anyone out there has heard of a naturopathic doctor, very likely they've gone to Bastyr University. And they also have very robust science-based nutrition programs as well. So they train registered dietitians, and they're the only school that offers this really unique double master's program that I took that's really centered on a full mind-body approach to nutrition. So the psychology and the physiology of what's going on in your mind and your body.
Right, and I think that's anyone who's listened to any of the podcasts that I've had before. That's a big deal for me. The food stuff is pretty easy. The physical stuff is pretty easy. The mental stuff is really what most of it is. That's a big deal. So we're definitely
For
going to
sure.
talk more about that. Okay, so so I'm going to put you on the spot. Um, can you explain to someone? So if someone were to say, "Oh, okay, Bastyr, what exactly is naturopathy? What is that exactly?"
Well, one of the ways I like to think of it is naturopathic doctors they try to find the root cause of what is wrong, what's going on in the body, and then how do they support the body's own natural healing processes in overcoming that or treating that disease. Whereas traditional medical model is what prescription or surgery can I do to treat the symptoms.
Right.
Naturopathy looks at the whole person and tries to find the best way to support the body's, just like I said, own healing processes.
So do you think there's a natural conflict, I guess, between what would we consider traditional Western medicine and something like naturopathy because of, as you framed it as then, if one side is really trying to treat symptoms and the other side is trying to find a root cause, this is why there's this natural clashing of the worlds, so to speak?
I think so, but that's also the way I describe it is a very simplistic view of it, because there definitely are, traditional medical doctors that do try to support the natural healing. And then there's also naturopathic doctors that focus on what supplements can I throw at the symptoms that are going on and maybe don't fully support the body's own healing. So there's that gray area in the middle where they kind of overlap. But at the very, fundamental level, they are treating things from different approaches for sure. Yeah.
Sure. Okay, that's good. So when did you? So you say you got your bachelor's in nutrition, and then you say that's boring. I don't know, why is that boring?
Oh gosh, I mean, probably just because it's a standalone bachelor's of science in nutrition that by itself it doesn't entitle me to any kind of licensure or registration in this state or any other state that I know of. And so I guess that's why I think of it as boring. And also, to me, it was just a stepping stone. I knew that when I went back to school that I wanted to do the master's program that I did complete,
Right.
and I'd never finished my bachelor's degree. And so I just did it all lumped together. And so to me, it was just this stepping stone to get me to where I really wanted to be. I guess that's why I think of it as a boring piece of
Well,
my
so
education.
my assumption then is that you've been interested in nutrition for some time.
Yes, yeah.
Of course, that's my assumption is, maybe it's the family business. Who knows?
My
you-
dad's Dr. Oz. Did you know that? No, just
right. That would be interesting. So if you're studying nutrition, chances are you have an interest in nutrition prior to you actually studying it. And it's not like anyone on, the day before they've got to actually pick a major. They're going nutrition. I guess that'll work. I don't know. What? So I'm assuming then that you've been interested in nutrition for a while. So what is it about nutrition that's kind of interested you, and what do you find keeps you interested?
Yeah, I mean, if I go back to where it started, it's I think where a lot of women that are interested in nutrition, or women in general that have had to deal with anything with nutrition. It's, out of high school, started gaining some weight, tried various diet programs, and um, started just reading on my own. This was back when there wasn't the internet and we had to go to the library to look
What?
things up. But
There was
yeah,
a time before the
um,
internet? You're kidding me.
I I I started reading and finding books about whole food nutrition, and that just made a lot of sense to me that, eating foods in their most natural form, with all the nutrients that were there that nature intended, would be more healthful for us. And I out of high school, I started going to Oregon State University, and I did change my major about 5 or 7 times because every class I took was really interesting. But I finally landed on the dietetics program, and I was going to be an RD.
Mhm.
However, when I took my first nutrition class back then, so this had to be around 91 or 92, the first nutrition class was still teaching the 4 food groups, and had nothing to do with nutrient density or the quality of food at all. It just had to do with you had to have the bread group, you had the milk
Right.
group, you had the fruit and vegetable group, and then you had the what was the other
The
one?
meat group. Yeah.
The meat group, right? Yeah. And I got to that, and I was like, I can't go out and teach people this. This doesn't
Right.
resonate with what I think is true. And so, I went to school a couple of years, and then I dropped out, and it was 20 years later that I finished my bachelor's then at Bastyr, when I finally found a program that felt like at that time really resonated with what I believe to be true and the most healthful way for people to eat.
Sure. Okay. So about what time did you complete your master's degree?
What
What year?
time?
What year? Yeah.
It was like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. No. Um, um, 2012 was when I graduated with my double master's.
So from now, were you providing services as a nutritionist prior to then, or was it after that you got licensed and service certified through the state and all that? So you've been basically operating as a nutritionist since then.
Yes, I did some online nutrition coaching prior to going to Bastyr, just trying to pursue my passion, but feeling like things in my life weren't aligned in such a way that I could go to school, and so I just was trying
Sure.
to follow my passion without actually having the degrees to follow it up. And a lot of things happened over a couple of years where I was able to actually go back to school and get the degrees that I really wanted to.
Okay. And now, so this is basically this is your gig, your full-time gig now, right? You're helping people through nutrition.
Yes, I do also teach at a school down in Portland part-time. I have one little retail part-time job that I'm working on kicking to the curb, as I'm able to take my private practice launch full time, both in person and online. So
Okay. Okay.
transition phase for sure right now.
Right. Yeah. So, and it's good that you've kept that goal as you've been. Life happens, and sometimes it's easy to lose sight of it. But it's important. If it's important enough to you, you'll find a way.
Yeah.
Is what it comes down to. Okay. So, you graduate in 2012, and here you go. Hello world. You're about to change things for people, and lo and behold, a couple years later, though, now what you were taught. Let's talk a little bit about that because
Yeah.
Bastier's not your typical kind of university in terms of their curriculum, in terms of their philosophy, right?
Right. For what they offer, it's, for the nutrition programs that are available from university level accredited organization, they are a cutting edge. We know in the keto world that cutting edge in
Right.
nutrition organization isn't as cutting edge as it could be, but for that type of education, they are very cutting edge. They have a whole foods based curriculum, so they really teach about nutrient density and foods being in their wholest form. They also take a really mind-body approach as well, and especially the program that I did was all about that intersection of psychology and nutrition, both what you eat and how it affects what you think, but also what you think affects how you eat.
Right. And
And
so we're okay. So I don't mean to interrupt. Well, actually, I do because that's kind of what I do.
yeah,
But I want to make sure that that's definitely something we're going to talk about,
yeah,
the mind body thing, and because we've talked about that. I've talked about that before on different podcasts, and I've written about it. And you and I were chatting about it a little while ago. Um, That's huge. That's absolutely huge. The mind body thing is it really is the make or break. So being focused on that, it not only allows you to see things differently in your life, but it allows you to see things for other people in a way that they probably won't be able to see things. And what I mean is, if someone's coming to you with a problem, if you're trained to understand the mind body connection, it's easier for you to understand there's an underlying symptom here that is more in the mind side than it is in the physical side, and you're able to sort of delineate those things with a little bit more clarity, right? Is that just an assumption that's false on my part, or you think that's a little bit more accurate than?
Yeah, I think that part of it was my worldview and my psychological view before I went to school, um, my experiences and my own personal exploration of that, and then what I learned at school, and then experience in clinical setting as well, working with people afterwards. All of that together really helps me have a keen eye for what part of this is just something that's psychologically based, um, something that is just your metabolism not working correctly, biology or physiological based, but also nutrient imbalances as well. So you can be on following a great diet, a ketogenic diet, but you can still have nutrient deficiencies or imbalances that skew your psychology as well. So
Well, and that's okay. That's another big deal. And one of the problems that I one of the frustrations for me is, um, you yes, I talk a lot about the psychology of things, and I think that's important. However, there's a reality that there's still chemicals involved, right? I mean, if you're
yeah,
deficient in some way, it's gonna affect you, and it may be affecting your mental state as well. Just because, hey, guess
absolutely.
what? Your brain is made up of chemicals as well, so they
Hmm.
have interactions. So if you're deficient, it's entirely possible that whatever it is that has got you messed up, yes, it presents itself as a psychological thing, but
Yeah,
it could very well have, like you're just talking about, a supplemental, a hey, this one particular thing, mineral, vitamin, whatever it is, add that, it helps. There you go. I mean, the psychological problem is solved by a chemical
yeah.
response, or vice versa.
Well, we
Um,
haven't even got to the genetic part of that as well, because
sure.
their epigenetics and all that, whole other topics.
Right, and that's way beyond anything that we can talk about here, mostly because I don't know much about it, so I don't want to sound too stupid. So I'll stick to what I know, and that's losing football games. So
Oh, no.
um, okay, so in 2012 you graduated, and I'm certain that was a boost for you in terms of your motivation, because you're like, yeah, I did it. I'm the person. I'm becoming the person I want to be. I'm going to start helping people. And then a couple years later, something not so great happened, right?
Yeah. Well, and if I can throw in too, just, before the big event that we're going to talk
Sure.
about, but,
Yeah.
my approach at that time after I graduated was a culmination of, that mind body integration of nutrition and psychology. And the school that I went to is fantastic. And the focus is on things like mindful eating, intuitive eating, and the movement called Health at Every Size, which basically says, everybody who's ever gone on a diet, they never keep the weight off. Therefore, we should just give up and stop trying to help people lose weight and just help them feel good about the person that they are. And so that was my whole focus in my private practice, was helping people with positive psychology, self-esteem, not prescribing specific weight loss diets, just education on whole foods nutrition and how to make healthier food choices. All the while, as my own waistband is expanding, because I'm living that myself. I'm living mindful eating. I'm living the 80-20 rule, which is if 80% of the time you're eating whole foods, then 20% of the time it doesn't matter what you're eating. And but I'm still, espousing, this education that I got, which I thought was the end all be all of health in this country that we're in.
Okay, so
Um,
let me recap just so that people are clear on what you just said. So really kind of three things. There's mindful eating, intuitive eating, and health at every size. And I want to talk a little bit about health at every size,
Yeah.
because it's a phrase that gets bandied about. And on its face, it seems like such a positive sort of idea, and it seems like such a very edifying sort of idea. And
But
essentially, go ahead, go ahead.
it's research based too. So, the proponents of this movement, the people who've written the books about it and have the trainings and certifications in it, they're PhD level, and they've done a lot of research on this. And
Right.
so, yeah, a lot of people who've tried to lose weight don't keep it off. That's the
Right.
truth.
And so so this whole idea of health at every size, and I'm gonna paraphrase what I understand it to be. So if I'm wrong, please correct me. The idea behind it, the center point of it is, um, it doesn't losing weight is not necessarily healthy. What's healthy is feeling good about yourself, and that feeling good about yourself, that self-esteem, is hugely more important, vastly more important than any other actual physical health, because one will follow the other in their ideal. And part of that is based upon, like you said, the research, but the research is almost always centered around highly restricted caloric diets,
Yeah.
still high carb diets, those
Yeah.
kinds of things. So naturally, when you restrict someone's caloric intake by 1,000 calories a day, and then you make them eat that way for 8 months, 9 months, 10 months, 2 years, whatever it is, and they lose a ton of weight, and then you let them go outside that, and after 2 years of starving, they're probably going to want to eat more, and they gain
Yeah.
it all back. Instead
Yeah.
of saying maybe it was our methodology, they say, oh well, no one's going to be able to keep weight off, so we might as well stop trying to make people lose weight. Let's focus on everyone be happy, right?
Yeah, yeah, and stop shaming people for being overweight. It's just the way they are. It's there's nothing we can do about it. So therefore, we should just don't focus on that. Don't worry about that. Just accept people for the size that they are, and focus on the health behaviors rather than weight loss. Yeah.
Right, and you and I were talking a little bit beforehand. My biggest problem with that is, that's great, because I don't care about weight either. However, you're killing people. That's people are still dying because obesity is an actual killer. It will kill you. So there is
Well,
something to be said about being concerned about those sorts of things.
well, and what I think is even more important than, gosh, we should do something, there is something we can do, and
Right.
it's really powerful, and it's not so hard to follow,
Right.
especially if you have the right kind of support. And it's a really great way to live, and you feel great, and you feel good about yourself. So
Right. So yeah, why not get a all the bases covered, right? So
yeah,
you can be healthy and you can still feel good about yourself, right? So
yes,
okay, so that was the methodology that you were trained in. That's the
yeah,
methodology you were espousing, and um, but at the same time, like you said, you noticed personally for you, you were not reaping any sort of physical benefits. You were getting bigger, right? So you were
yeah,
putting on weight. Um, so let me ask you, because I think I've asked almost all the doctors, nurses, dietitians, nutritionists who come on about this idea of cognitive dissonance, when you're trained a certain way, and yet the reality of the situation of the people you're dealing with is completely counter to that. And what I mean is, for most of the time, it's for folks who are trained in traditional ways of nutrition. It's low fat, high carb, high complex carb. Don't worry, it's everything in moderation, that sort of thing. And they see all of their clients still gaining weight and still getting
yeah,
unhealthy. And that's their cognitive dissonance is, okay, what's going on here? Why is this not working? So your cognitive dissonance was a little bit different, because you were thinking, wait a second, I don't feel good about myself because I'm getting all this weight. All the stuff I'm telling these other people to do, it's affecting me negatively. How am I supposed to be able to tell people, health at any size, when I don't feel good about myself?
yeah. And I can't say that I didn't feel good about myself. I think I had really good self-esteem at that, and so it was just more of like, um, I had to just dismiss that, like, well. Um, and I think I thought I was fooling people. However, there were people that would point it out. So, for example, I had like an energy reading from somebody that did some Reiki on me once, and her comment was like, "Oh, I get this energy that you're not living in alignment with your your values. And I was like, what is she talking about? Like, no, I'm living the life. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing here. So I don't know what she's talking about. So there was a disconnect in my mind, but it was more of like a compartmentalizing, like, well, that doesn't fit, so I'll just not think about that.
Right, and that's a defense mechanism, right? When
Right.
things don't match up, they don't align. You have that cognitive dissonance. One thing you can do is stress about it, freak out about it, or dismiss it, or actually try to find some sort of where's the middle ground, root cause, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So and I'm gonna I may make people mad, but whatever. But most guys tend to dismiss. We are able to compartmentalize a whole lot better, a whole lot easier than gals can. So typically guys will come when there's cognitive dissonance, they'll just box it up, put it away. Okay, this doesn't fit with my paradigm. Whoop-de-doo. I'll deal with it later or not at all. Women tend to not do that. They tend to want to try to mesh things together to try to figure it out, which causes stress, right? So I find it interesting that you would be, I think, a different example of someone who is, okay, this doesn't fit. I don't have time to deal with this right now. I'm going to put this aside and I'll deal with it later, maybe, and I'll just keep doing what I'm doing. Right.
Well, so you're doing a little psychoanalysis on me here and
A little
telling
bit.
me I have a little bit too much male tendency, male energies there. We could go back to my childhood. I could tell you where that comes from, and no.
A little bit. Yeah. All right. So yeah, I apologize for that.
No, 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 I love that. We could do that all day. So
Right. So so you find yourself in this state of, okay, having to kind of put some things aside, just, for lack of a better phrase, for the sake of your own sanity. And then let's talk about the big event, right? So you've been
well,
doing this for a couple of years.
yeah, I mean, the accident, March 4th, 2014, was a life-changing moment, and I didn't. Yeah, I was forced to deal with that cognitive dissonance in a different way. It wasn't because I was decided this isn't working. It was because I had a bunch of other problems. So I was stopped in traffic, and I was hit by a distracted driver who hit me, rear-ended me, probably going about 35 miles an hour. And so I had the double impact of being slammed from behind, but then also when my car hit the car in front of me, there was a second impact. And so primarily after the accident, it was crush injuries to the front of my legs were the most significant injuries that I had, and I spent about 2.5 months in bed after that, recovering from that, because they were so swollen, and I, didn't quite develop it, but I was on the verge of developing something called compartment syndrome, which is really dangerous and could have had some really serious things going on my legs. But basically the swelling and pain in my legs made it so that I was bedridden for about 2.5 months after that. And I did get to the point of the fall of 2014 where I'd recovered enough from that I could start to return to work. So I was out of work for really significant period of time. And however, even in that fall when I went back to work, the swelling and the pain in my legs were still so severe that I couldn't sit without my legs elevated. So what is that? I don't know, 6 or 8 months after the accident, the swelling was still so bad that I couldn't sit without my legs elevated. And a couple months after that, so about December of 2014, rolling into the fall of early 2015, was when my neuroendocrine symptoms hit. And that turned out to be even more debilitating than the crush injuries on my legs. And I ended up, the beginning part of 2015, I spent 3 months in bed again from totally debilitating symptoms. And the symptom list is extremely long, and which made it really complicated and difficult for any doctors that I saw, and I saw a lot of doctors.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody could really figure out what was going on. Of course, the one thing they wanted to say was, well, you're depressed. That's why, if we can't figure out where all these symptoms are coming from, then we'll just say you're depressed. And it's like, no, actually, I feel pretty positive despite this list of extreme fatigue, constant lightheaded dizziness, extreme hypoglycemia, so much so that if I tried to go to the grocery store, I would shake and tremble. I couldn't remember where I'd parked my car. oh gosh, the list goes so on. My blood pressure was skyrocketing. Before the car accident, even though I was overweight, my blood pressure was normal. So a skyrocketing blood pressure. Oh gosh, the list is so long, and it's been so long since I felt a lot of it. I can't remember a lot of it, but I basically was just wiped out in bed because I couldn't tolerate being around light or sound. It was so overwhelming, just stimulation overload, and so for me being an extrovert, not being able to be around sound or light, I couldn't be around people, and so I was isolated for 3 months in bed again. Doctors not being able to figure out what was going on, and I thought I had severe adrenal fatigue. However, I had some symptoms that didn't fit with that, and 3 months in bed is a long time to be able to do a lot of research online. And my training at Bastyr did teach me a lot about how to research, look up research articles and read them and understand them. And I did a lot of that. And I finally, my best guessed and the symptoms all fit was with something called post-traumatic hypopituitarism. And this turns out to be something that's very common in our beloved football sport. So from post-concussive syndrome is another name or similar syndrome. It's also really common in combat veterans that have been in combat zones. They experience this, as well as motor vehicle accidents. So those are really common things that comes up, and it turns out that doctors aren't really trained very well to recognize it, and they're also trained to think that it's something that's rare. And a third part of that made it hard to diagnose is that my symptoms didn't show up until 8 months after the accident. However, I found research that showed that it was very common that it didn't show up until 8 months, 12 months, even up to 5 years after the significant impact like that. And whether it's football or car accident or war zones. And so it fit very well. And once I had my own diagnosis, I thought I could get some treatment, but it turned out to be almost as hard to get somebody to believe my theory because of nowadays everybody can look everything up on WebMD, and so they just thought like, oh yeah, she thinks she knows what's wrong with her, so
Right.
we'll throw that out the window, and I'm gonna treat her for Lyme disease instead or something. And
Sure.
it was hard to get somebody to treat it even when I had a diagnosis for myself. But so then I started getting lab tests that supported what was going on. So basically, when your pituitary isn't working, all the adrenal endocrine glands in your body don't work either. And so,
Right.
yeah.
So it's a cascading effect. And so
Yeah.
during your research, did you discover any hypotheses as to why it can manifest such a long period of time afterwards?
Yeah, it basically is just the cascade of hormones takes that long to, cascade, I guess, down to the
Right.
point where you're having those extreme symptoms. And if I do look back early on, I did have a lot of the symptoms. They were just milder early on, and because the pain in my legs was so great to start with, that was a priority as far as my feelings of what symptoms were going on. And plus I was already stuck in bed after those injuries, and so I couldn't notice even more symptoms. And I did have early on the naturopath that I first saw after my car accident. She mentioned several times that it was common to see, after the initial injuries healed enough, that it was common to see extreme adrenal fatigue show up from the trauma. It just takes a while for that hormone cascade to catch up to seeing those symptoms. Or it could also be that your body's prioritizing healing to this other area first. And I think that part of that healing as well as a huge stressor on the body too.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about the physical side of things, because you said that did you say you did or were close to having compartment syndrome?
I did not have it. I was assessed for it from a couple of specialists because the symptoms I was having were out of alignment with the degree of injury that I had for my legs, at least for what the doctors were saying. Right. And more likely what I started to develop something called CRPS, chronic regional pain syndrome, which one of the symptoms of that is extreme swelling, hypersensitivity. So both light touch is extremely painful. So for example, like a cat just brushing across my legs would feel like somebody was stabbing me with a knife. Then things that would be normally painful were excruciatingly painful. So early on I had they tried to do acupuncture treatments on my legs, and it just felt like somebody had just, I can't even describe, hammered me, with a giant stake through my leg, and acupuncture should not hurt. And so
Right.
they just were baffled, like, why is this so painful? Why is she reacting this? And why is it so swollen still, so months afterwards? And so they did evaluate me for compartment syndrome. They found that I didn't have that. And later I was really glad that I didn't, because I saw pictures of the surgeries that they have
That's
to do on
nasty.
people's legs for that. And I'm so grateful that I didn't have that.
So basically, compartment syndrome, for those of you who don't know, consider yourself lucky, but you're about to be unlucky. It's where you have a severe trauma, especially to soft tissue, and it swells up to the point where blood flow is restricted, and it causes not only tissue to die, but it can cause nerves to die as well. And that's one of the reasons when you get nerve sensitivity like that, that's sort of the last bastion of your nerves trying to stay alive, is when they get really, really hypersensitive like that. So that's one of the symptoms that they have. Well, to treat it, they have to relieve a lot of that swelling. And
That's
I
what
don't
they
know.
tell you. Yeah, don't worry, we'll
Right.
just relieve the swelling.
Right. So what a lot of people don't seem to realize, because people go, "Oh, okay, yeah, relieve the swelling." Well, yeah, they don't do that from the inside. They do that from the outside. They basically
Yeah,
slice you open
yeah,
and sort of lace the open wound
yeah,
at, a couple of inches wide, and make sure they keep it clean 24 hours a day
yeah.
while the
From
swelling goes down.
knee to ankle. Yeah.
It's pretty nasty. So it's a good thing you did not have that.
Yes, very grateful.
Okay, so your physical symptoms were pretty obvious from the get-go. Of course, the root cause was a little bit more difficult to find, but you did eventually find out, well, what was the cause of your leg pain. Um, so did it go away 100%? Do you still have any kind of remnants of the accident from today, or are you basically 100% at this point?
Not 100%, no. Let's see. For the legs, I mean, after I started going keto, I wasn't even trying to treat my legs with that.
Right.
That was trying to do the neuroendocrine symptoms. But
Right.
I was really amazed at how the chronic pain went away. So up until I started ketogenic diet, I still was having really significant pain in my legs, a lot of swelling. I couldn't stand for very long or sit very long without them elevated. Um, and also, if I did any increased activity over what I was used to doing, the following that evening and the following day, they would just swell and be really, really painful. And so that was, just over a year after the accident, I was still having that significant of symptoms. And
Right.
and today I still have. So like this weekend, I did go for my first hike in 2.5 years. It was about 5 miles, and I had plenty of energy and no pain. And it's been a couple of days now, and I do notice a little bit of a little extra sensitivity in that area, a little tenderness. So different than what I would have been before the accident, but it's nothing like it would have been before keto.
Right. Well, I mean, you wouldn't have been able to go for the walk before you actually.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Okay.
so what I want to make sure that everyone understands, we're talking about two different manifestations of essentially the same problem, and that problem is the hormonal disruption, that again, that cascading effect. We're just going to keep saying cascade because you're in Washington State, and that's where the
We could say
so
the Olympics of the hormones and the cascades of the
right,
hormones. And
let's throw it all in there. Or the Puget of. Uh, I've just named all the geological bodies I know in the state of Washington, so I'm out at this point. So yeah, that cascading effect, it manifests itself in a physical way with your legs, but it's also manifesting itself in other ways, in non-physical ways, like you were talking about with the the uh, uh,
the
the
neuroendocrine.
yeah, and so
Yeah.
you were talking about having of course, it comes back to depression for me, but whenever I'm talking about it, but I mean, you're simply you're showing symptoms of depression. That's why they're saying, oh, you're just depressed. That's why the doctors are saying, oh, you're just depressed. Well, there's a reason for that.
Yeah, well, and actually, I was not showing symptoms of depression, but that was just their way of they didn't know where my symptoms fit, and so I must be, there's a term called somatization where you're just,
Right.
you
You're making
know,
it up.
you're
Right.
kind of making it up, and so you really aren't this bad. You're just really depressed. And it was like, actually, if they would have done the proper assessment, like I was hopeful for the future, and I wasn't depressed. I felt terrible.
Right. And it's manifesting itself in ways that you're not used to, right? Because and this is one thing, good doctors, good medical people of any kind are going to realize one thing. You know what's normal for you.
Yeah,
If you've been alive for 40 or so years, you've got a really good, data sampling of what's a normal day for you. And when you're telling this person something is not right, I can't quite put my finger on it, something ain't
yeah,
quite right, I'd like to, investigate this a little bit. A good medical professional is going to take that and say, okay, we need to look into this a little bit. Of course, there are people who are completely psychosomatic and they're hypochondriacs and everything's the end of the world. Sure. However, if you don't have that reputation,
yeah,
take it seriously. So I'm going to get off my soapbox. All right. So, so what was it then? Because, okay, you did a bunch of research to find out, hey, what's wrong with me?
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
So there's a gap there between, hey, what's wrong with me?
yeah,
And I'm a, I'm a keto advocate now. So
yeah.
let's bridge that gap. How do you get from one to the other?
Yeah, well, so I thought when I first figured out what was wrong with me that I could find a doctor that could treat me, and that was a dead end. And so then again, I'm like, okay, so let's just go back to my own nutrition training. What do I know? Like, if this is centered in my brain or this is something wrong in my brain, what do I know that will help my brain get better? And because that
Right.
is my belief, how am I going to support my body's own natural healing? And so, one of the things I did learn in school was that a ketogenic diet is used to treat epilepsy. And I remember that. I mean, we didn't have a lot of training. It was more like, mentioned 5-minute mention in one class.
Right.
And I just thought, well, if that's something that treats something really wrong with the brain, maybe that's something I should look into. And so I can't remember early on what I first found on it, but very quickly I landed on Dr. Peter, is it
Yep.
Adia? I have only read his name. I've never heard it pronounced, but
Yep.
I found his blog and I devoured everything on it.
I think everyone who
And
finds his blog does that because he's a genius. He's just super smart,
yeah,
and he's accessible. He doesn't write like an academic. He writes like a person.
yeah, and
But
I understood all of the science and
right,
the biology and stuff that he's talking about, and so that really that appealed to me because I've never been a fad dieter. I've never been a like jump on this bandwagon. In fact, I've never really been good at following any kind of a restricted diet in the past at all. Um, and so I really took my time and I did as much research as I could about this. So I read all of his blog and then watched the videos, and I quickly found Volek and Finney and their research,
yep,
and watched every video I could on them. I read their book, The Art and Science of Low Carb Living,
right,
and the more I read, I was like, this I think will help me. I mean, I've got nothing to lose. I'm already stuck in bed here for 3 months. What the heck have I got to lose if I'm just going to do an experiment and try this out? My reasoning was that, if my whole problem with the neuroendocrine symptoms was something wrong in my brain, this high-fat diet could likely help it,
right,
as well as I hypothesized that I could bypass my adrenal fatigue, because that was one of the most debilitating symptoms and maybe you're familiar with this in our physiology, is that when your blood sugar drops too low, your adrenals have to kick in to boost, temporarily boost things that keep you from dying, basically.
right, right,
But when my blood sugar was dropping too low, my adrenals were too exhausted to kick in and do their job, and
right,
so I theorized that if I could bypass that, if I don't need this exogenous balance of glucose anymore, if I could get my body to run on fat, that I could bypass that malfunction in my adrenal glands and just let them rest, because that's the only way they heal is through rest. And so I thought, okay, I've got an experiment here I'm going to try on myself. Let's see what happens. And I committed at first to 90 days. I knew through the research that I'd read and what everybody else has posted that, it takes about 12 weeks to fully adapt to this. And so I figured I need to give myself a fair shot at this, knowing the different adaptation phases that we go through. And I started out with a commitment. May 18th, 2015 was my start date, and I committed to 90 days, and it didn't take 90 days to sell me. I mean, within the first week, the first couple of weeks especially, the symptoms started to subside. It was so fast, and then all the other benefits just piled on top, all the other things that I didn't even fathom that would be a benefit, like, the pain in my legs going away and the swelling in my legs. Like, I had no inkling that would be affected by doing this. And it was just week after week and month after month, that was another thing that was like, wow, and this is better, and this is gone. And that stiffness in my ankles that I thought was just part of getting old, like, that's gone. And, blood pressure's normal, and the clarity of mind and this boundless energy, and go on and on about all the great benefits. But it very quickly became of like, I'm never going back to my other way of living. Like, not only is this reversed all the symptoms that I had from this car accident, but it's made my life so much better than it ever was that I can't ever imagine going back to living any other way.
Right, and you're echoing a sentiment I think that a lot of people have. It's one of mock frustration of, why haven't I done this sooner? But then there's also this idea of there's no way I could go back to my previous way. So having felt that way, having experienced it yourself, now you've got this opportunity where you've got a platform to help people in the same regard, right? Because once you're, and I'll use the term loosely, but once you're recovered, or once you're healed from this horrific accident that put you out of commission for close to a year, or maybe a little.
Yeah, we're coming up on 2 years here, so yeah.
So once you're back into being able to live a relatively normal life, and you owe it to, hey, I'm doing everything they tell me not to in terms of what I'm supposed to eat. Now you're going to be like a crusader to try to help people do the same thing, right?
Yeah, and I didn't start out with that as my goal, and frankly, because of the cohort of my close cohort and healthcare professionals that I went to school with, I was in the closet about it when I first started, and my first blog is all about that. About I have a confession, I'm coming out of the closet about my diet, and even though I went to the most progressive university as far as whole food nutrition, and so much we joked about at school, but also we advocated with our clients, like, don't fear fat, eat full fat milk and cheese and all these things, there's still this underlying current of like, well, fat's not bad, but don't go crazy with it. Like, it's good, but not that good, And so, and then also, I was losing weight, and we're not supposed to focus on that. And if you promote weight loss, then that's somehow anti-feminist or something. And so I was very, very much closeted and very secretive about it. And I did start to tell a few people here and there, and some
they're going to notice, right? I mean, they're going to notice at some point in time that, what, you're not the fat friend anymore. At some point in time, they're going to like, hey, what's going on? And then it's like you have to confess to them, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, I did. I confessed to a few people, or confided in a few people. I was surprised at some of the people that I thought would be the most supportive, actually were the most vocal opponents of it at first.
Really?
Oh my God, what are you doing? You're going to ruin your metabolism. You're going to gain all the weight back when you go off of it. You're going to make yourself insulin resistant. You're like all the myths that are out there about it. They were, well, no, I had a lecture on it once, and they told me it ruins your metabolism. And I'm like, have you looked at the research? And so,
or my favorite is you're going to die of ketoacidosis. Like, that's all they hear is keto, whatever, and that's what they associate everything with.
Right. Yeah. Well, or you're, the whole acid alkaline myth, right? And you're acidifying your body, so you're going to turn
so acidic. You're just going to eat yourself.
Yeah, your bones are going to turn to dust and fall apart inside your body, and
because your body clearly has no way of homeostasis. Period. There's no way at all to negate any of the chemical variants that you eat. Right.
Yeah, yeah,
We are at the
yeah.
whim of the broccoli. All right. So
Yeah, so in the beginning, I was secretive about it. I was just doing it for myself. I had no plans that this was going to be my whole new business model or that I was going to help other people. And so, I did start blogging about it because, the transformation was so phenomenal. I felt like I owed it to people to share that because, other people need to know that there's something so powerful to help heal, especially chronic pain. I mean, there isn't really anything, even in the naturopathic world, that works very well for chronic pain syndromes. Things like fibromyalgia, for example.
right.
I've had several people I worked with that they're from fibromyalgia pain, 5 or 10 years of pain, and now all of a sudden within a week or a month, they don't have that pain anymore. So
Right.
so I started slowly putting information out there. I put some stuff on my blog, and I just thought, well, nobody's going to read that, and then I was started sharing a little bit on social media, on my Facebook, and people started quickly asking me, like, well, what do you eat? Like, okay, what is this diet? I have a hard time wrapping my brain around it. Like, well, what do you eat? And so I just thought, well, most people post pictures of food on Instagram, so I'll just start putting my food on Instagram, and then I can just say, instead of trying to explain to people what I eat all the time, I'll just say, go look. I'll post
Right.
all my food. I'll be totally authentic and transparent, and you can just go look, and then I don't have to explain it to you. So
Right.
I started doing that, and then the more I put my story out there, the more people are coming to me for help, and it's so rewarding. It's finally like the work that I've wanted to be able to do, the impact I've wanted to have on people's lives and health, and it's so awesome.
Well, yeah, and it's um you're able to see, so you've got a unique perspective because you lived the patient side of it, and kind of got healed out of necessity, not out of,
Yeah,
just pure, I'll give it a shot. It was like, I don't have any other options, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
you've been
I'm
there, and now you can kind of guide other people down this path as well. And so you've got a unique perspective on that, as I'm assuming, right? Like you can see it from both sides. Like, um, anytime we deal with people, there's going to be unique circumstances. Everyone's different, everyone's got their own personality, so having to deal with it and being able to identify, difficult personalities for really what they are sometimes, because you've been on the other side and you know full well, like we were talking about before, you're able to give someone the benefit of the doubt that they know what they're talking about, until they prove otherwise, in terms of, what they're experiencing, and it helps you to be able to diagnose and to be able to help them, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm not. I think my practice as a nutritionist is unique because most of the time the people that come to me are really ready to make a change. Um, Whereas maybe if I was a doctor or nurse or something like that, I'd have people coming in with these big symptoms that they know something's not right. They want it to be better, but maybe they're not completely ready to make some really radical changes. So um, most of the people that come to me are really ready to make some big changes.
Yeah, and that's so a motivated clientele is really, really helpful, right?
Yes, yes.
it it almost it improves the success rate, because it doesn't matter how spot on you are with your diagnosis and how spot on you are with your proposed solution. If the patient doesn't do it, there's no point to it, right? So when you've got
Yeah.
motivated clientele, that's really, really helpful. um, okay, so let's talk a little bit about, because we were talking mind body, the connection before, and one of the things that I'm big into is um, of the psychology of success, of achieving, right? So um because you just talked about your clients, a motivated clientele is helpful. Well, so let's talk a little bit about what makes a good patient in terms of their psychology and their preparedness and readiness to actually succeed. And the reason I say this is because, unfortunately, for a lot of people, they think they want to get healthy, or they
Mhm.
think they want to lose weight, or they think they want to reverse type 2 diabetes or whatever it is, but they're not actually prepared mentally for what's about to happen if they actually achieve that.
Mm.
Because for years, I'll take me for example. I'll just use me as a hypothetical. This is not really me, but for years I was a specific. I identified myself as a specific individual, a specific person. I was for whatever reason I was Fat Brian. Let's just say that. I decide I want to get healthy, and I do, and I'm no longer Fat Brian, but I still identify myself as Fat Brian. What I fail to do is prepare myself for the eventuality of success. I failed to prepare myself to be that. So what I've got now is this, again, cognitive dissonance of the person that I'm looking at is not the person I think I am. So I've got to deal with this feeling of fraud, or I've got to deal with this feeling of it's all just going to be swept out from under me, or what's the deal? Um, so let's talk a little bit about the psychology of being prepared for success and how you can help people do that.
Yeah, well, and I think that's interesting to think about too, because I work a lot with, you know, on the other side of that, helping people commit to the change.
Right. Right.
So even before that, in
Oh, sure. Yeah.
the programs that I'm working with, I make sure I want people to have a really big why and reflect on why they're doing this. You know, beyond the weight loss. I think it's
Right.
more powerful if people have a reason beyond weight loss to do this. But so what you're talking about then is something that's called ego dystonic. So something that's not in alignment with how you see yourself, or the characteristics or the classes that you belong to. So we have a tendency to psychologically put ourselves in different categories. We belong to different groups, and that's how
Right
we
or wrong.
identify ourselves.
Yeah, but we do it right or wrong. We do it
Yeah,
accurate or
yeah,
inaccurate. It doesn't matter. We
yeah.
still identify ourselves a certain way.
It's how we build our identity. And you're right. So if you have been overweight your entire life, or if you've been the fat friend, or if you've been the sick one, or if you can never be active because you're always too tired,
Right.
that can be part of how you identify yourself. And definitely that can be a challenge when you find yourself all of a sudden, maybe not all of a sudden, but gradually over a few months, is that part of how you identified yourself is no longer there, and you have to form a new identity. I've really found, especially with the group that I'm leading right now, one of the things that's really helpful for that is giving them a new group to belong to. There is a really strong, ketogenic or keto dieters or ketoers or whatever you want to call them, ketovangelists, right? That we can belong to that group now, and so it gives us a new identity, and we're not alone. There's a whole group of people that are doing it, and so that, I think, is one way of helping people bridge that gap between how I used to identify myself and what I am now is different, so I need to find a new identity. And so finding that group, that community support, finding commonality can be one way of doing that.
Yeah, I absolutely. And I've talked about it before. The Facebook group that we started, Ketogenic Success. That's one of the reasons I did it, is to give people that sort of community. And I think it's important for people to know that you don't have to have an identity right away. I mean, you don't have to re-identify yourself right away. I mean, it's going to take some time. And I'm not. Let's take a step back. I'm not trying to get too entirely pop psychology ish. I mean, the reality of it is, some people adjust easier or better than others.
Mm-hmm.
But the simple fact is, when you have identified yourself a certain way for your entire life, and all of a sudden that does not match up, it can lead to problems. It can lead to depression. It can lead to sadness. Whatever. Um, and Mary Roberts, who is the other writer on Ketovangelist, she wrote about this a while, I think a couple of weeks ago, and she basically said that one of the fallouts of her dramatic weight loss, because she's lost 108 pounds, and she's lost friends because of it. And it's not because she's done anything wrong. It's not because she's changed at all. It's because, just like she's got an identity for herself, other people have an identity for her, and she's no longer matching that. So instead of them looking at themselves and saying, hey, maybe I could change too, they want to push her away. Right.
Yeah.
So you've got to kind of bear the brunt of that. And that's another thing that can be a problem. You've got to be prepared for that sort of thing, because success breeds all kinds of things that you didn't expect. Right.
Yeah, I mean, the same thing happens when people quit drugs or get sober off of alcohol, is that, those friends that they used to be, that the only thing they had in common, for example, was going out drinking. You're going to lose some of those friends because they still want to keep doing their lifestyle. And so, yeah, that's part of that adjustment as well, is you might lose, and I've experienced that, where, hey, let's go out to dinner, and like, well, I want to go to this all-you-can-eat carb buffet, and you're not eating that anymore, so I don't think I want to go out to dinner with you.
Right.
And part of it is they want to keep living their unhealthy lifestyle. They don't want to face their own unhealthiness, or they're not ready to address that yet. Part of it is that it's a mourning for them. They're losing, like you
Right.
said, they identified you as that, and you're no longer that. So it's partially they're losing their friend, or part of their friend, or what they thought their friend was. So
Right. Right.
um,
Yeah, and it's easier to push someone away than it is to put the mirror on yourself. A lot of times,
yeah,
we go back to that. We go back to that compartmentalization thing. You can just box that up, shove it away. You don't have to deal with it anymore.
yeah,
So,
right.
see that we call that bringing it around. See what I did there? Brought it all the way
Yeah,
back.
yeah.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
do a callback. You're gonna do a callback at the end here too.
right, right. Yes, you're welcome, America. Yes. Um, okay, so let's talk a little bit about. So you have to. So in other words, when you prepare, and you mentioned it as well, and I've written about this, and it's one of my. I harp on it all the time. Is that why, having that big why anchor? You've got to know why you're doing what you're doing. If you don't know why you're doing it, you will fail. Period. If you cannot address why, because as soon as trouble hits, or as soon as you hit a rough patch, you have no anchor point. You're completely unmoored. You've got to find your why.
Yeah,
Uh, the second to that is you've got to give yourself permission to succeed, and you've got to be ready for it. Now, that does not mean you know every single eventuality, but what that means is you've got to be ready for all of those possible eventualities and be ready to handle it. So those are two huge things that are if you've got those two things, your level of success is going to be tremendously elevated over anyone else.
yeah,
So that's the psychology part of it. Let's talk a little bit about the actual, like, no kidding, here's the reality of it, of what are some common issues, problems, things that you see with your clientele, and what are some common solutions that you have for them? Obviously, I'm kind of putting you on the spot a little bit,
yeah,
but
yeah,
I'm asking for just generalities. Unless you've got, unless your
yeah.
clientele is such that you have these really unique one-off cases, which is going to be really more interesting, I think.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of them that comes to mind is that I have I have to be vague in what I talk about. I have a client that I'm working with for a very specific health problem, that I think would be something that would be a big enough why that it'd be like, I'm going to do whatever you tell me to do, and I'm going to not ever go off plan. However, this person's also a vegetarian, and um, I want to be respectful of that choice,
Sure.
and so it makes, and they're also their compliance is pretty low, and so that makes it really challenging, week after week, that I'm trying to get, gosh, don't you see the power of this could help this thing that you're dealing with, and then them telling me that they ate XYZ food, and I thought that was better than this other one, even though they both have tons of carbs in them. And it's kind of like, oh, yeah, yay,
Yeah.
you're doing great. Um, that's unique challenges of, people that I should think should be really motivated and have a really big why. However, they're just not that into it, and their
Right.
doctor said they should be doing it, right? So that's, on a personal, professional level, something that I struggle with is people that I see that could really benefit from it, but just aren't there yet, and so I just have to let that go and leave that up to them. But I also, I feel like I know there's some common pitfalls, and so I set, I'm doing an online program right now, and I set some boundaries, kind of like, the psychology of working with little kids is you tell them up front what you expect.
Right.
Here's the rules, here's what we're going to do, this is okay and this is not okay, and so I set that groundwork up in the very beginning, and so it helps, and I term it, and I honestly mean it, is that I set it up in that way so that it's the easiest for them, minimizes their cravings, and it gets them into ketosis as quick as possible, is the why we have these rules. And also because these are common pitfalls that people fall into as well. And so, we start out with, the common keto, no sugar, no starch, but I also do for the first month no recipes, no sweeteners of any kind. And there's definitely some sweeteners that fit with a ketogenic diet, but I cut those out for the first month because I want their taste buds to readjust to not sweet. I find that that's really, really good for minimizing cravings and getting, kind of a detox period from that, not only the sugar, but the sweetness of it. And so, I think that's a common pitfall I've seen, is that people in the very beginning, the way that they address their cravings is by trying to make pseudo carby foods, right? So
Don't get me started.
they make,
Do not get me
yeah,
started
so
on that. Yeah, that's a huge pet peeve of mine.
yeah, and
I'm living a completely unhealthy life. I'm going to make a complete change. I'm going to go. I'm all in keto. Hey, does anyone know what I can do for desserts?
yeah, yeah.
I you are not there. If that's what the first thing you're looking for, you are not there.
Yeah, and
So,
I think they have good intentions, and there's plenty. There's probably a million a million Pinterest posts on keto desserts.
sure.
Maybe I'm underestimating that with a million, but
Oh,
that um, that is one of my big no-nos, and because again, like, this is a radical diet change. This is, no joke. This is some serious stuff. It's hardcore, and it can be really hard if you do it the wrong way. And so I've found the best way to do that in the beginning is to don't do no desserts. So not only no desserts, but no stevia, no erythritol, which is fine later on. I think once you get a handle on those cravings, and it's not something you need every day. No desserts. And I also do no recipes, because I think it just makes it too complicated in the beginning. When you're doing a lot of recipes, you're out of touch with what the basic macros are in different foods. And so I found that having people do very, very simple meal prep, where it's just
yes.
a protein, maybe a little bit of veggies, and your fats
Right.
is what your meals are, then you learn how, what the macros are in basic foods. And that way, in the future, when you go to a party, you go to a restaurant, or you go to a any social event, you can look at foods and you can know what's in them without needing a recipe to know what to eat.
Right.
So that's why I do that in the beginning. But yeah, like you agree, the no desserts. And that not only is retraining your taste buds, but it's retraining your brain psychology to not crave anymore. So when you have a craving for sweet, and you reward your brain with something that's a pseudo sweet, even if it's made with stevia, a fat bomb or something like that, you reward that craving with something that tastes good,
Right.
and it's kind of sweet. And so all that does is perpetuate that craving, and
Yep.
it just makes more of them. If so, like a little child, if you reward bad behavior, they just keep doing the bad behavior. So you have to treat your brain like a little child and cut the cord on those cravings. And so the only way to get rid of those cravings, to minimize them and overcome them, is to ignore them, and they get less and less through time. So just like the little child tantrum, they throw tantrums at first, the cravings are really intense at first, but they very quickly go away and they get much more manageable, and that's what's going to help this be a lifelong lifestyle, a way of living this, than constantly needing to feed your craving with another fake dessert recipe. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I could not agree more with that. Mostly because I'm a sugar addict, and there is no there is no moderation for me. So I'm really really hardcore about that. It's off putting to a lot of people, but I got to be honest with you, I don't care. There is nothing detrimental about not eating sweet foods, period. There's nothing
right.
detrimental about it whatsoever. And if the risk is such that, like you said, you're going to possibly perpetuate that negative behavior, why even bother? Why
Yeah.
even risk it? Okay. Uh, I think that I have gone through all of the questions that I had for you today. And I really appreciate you coming on and chatting with us. Uh, you're you straddle an interesting couple of worlds. You're a nutritionist who comes from a less than traditional background. So
Hmm.
you've got folks that you're trying to cope with and deal with in terms of professional relationships that maybe don't quite understand the whole keto thing. Maybe do understand it a little bit differently than a traditional person, but you're still a nutritionist. So everyone associates a nutritionist with, the traditional sorts of, four food groups, the whole thing that you were talking about when you were, so, um, you straddling that world is kind of, that's an interesting place for you. I'm assuming that, you're still trying to settle in a little bit, where, what's comfortable for you, but I'm assuming that over time it's getting easier for you, right?
Yes, it is. Definitely being able to help other people have the same, health transformations, just fuels that for me. That reinforces that I'm doing the right thing. That I'm, that the health benefits I'm bringing about in people are so worth it. And that it's hurtful when I hear from my fellow cohort, that I went to school with, that are very judgmental. That even when I was sharing that I was going to be coming on your podcast, the criticism I got about, like, oh, you should ask about ketosis and osteoporosis, and you should ask about insulin resistance and ketosis causing that. And it's like, well, wait a
Keto
minute. Yeah.
causing resistance.
Yeah, so I'm like, okay, there's still, like, there's going to be the haters, right? Haters going to hate. And I just, well, and somebody told me too, it's like the people that are pioneers or trailblazers in the field, they just get a lot of criticism because, like you said, that cognitive dissonance where this doesn't fit with what they believed for so long, therefore they're gonna cut it down before they even give it a chance because it
Right.
doesn't fit with their paradigm. And I have to be prepared for that. I have to, build my strong community of people that have done the research and are living that life and living proof that it's, makes their life way better than anything else. So,
Right.
um,
I totally agree. Having a community that you can go to, no man is an island. I believe that was John Donne. I could be wrong about that, but the idea being having a community that you can fall back on, especially when you're never 100% of the time, and that you need help sometimes, and even if the help is I'm just having a bad day, I just need to vent. Having a place to do that is really, really helpful.
mhm.
So if someone were wanting to get a hold of you or to know more about what it is that you do or to find out more about you, what would be the best way for them to contact you or to research more about you?
Well, I have my website. It's Hypnotic Nutrition. We didn't even talk about that part of my training, my hypnosis, my certified clinical hypnosis training, which is a
Right.
small part of what I do. But so my business name is Hypnotic Nutrition, and that's my website is hypnoticnutrition.com.
Okay.
Um, there's a link on there to my blog. So if you want to read my whole story about my healing journey from the car accident using keto to heal from that, I've blogged every month about that.
Okay.
And yeah, I was hoping I'd have all kinds of fancy stuff to offer people all ready to go on here, but there's only so much I can do in a day
Yeah.
and a week. And
Right. That's reality. So are there links to, say, your Twitter account, Instagram? Do you have a Facebook page, anything like that we can link to in the show notes?
yeah, I can send you all that too. So my Facebook is Hypnotic Nutrition. My Instagram handle's Hypnotic Nutrition. It's all the
Okay.
same, but I can happily give you links to all that. Yeah.
Well, I think I've got it. I'll put them in the
Okay.
show notes, and that way, if someone wants to get a hold of you or follow you on any of those social media platforms, they'll be able to do that. But I really appreciate you coming on the show. Like I said, I think you've got a really interesting story. And of course, the good part is it's just kind of only just now started, right? I mean, you're at the beginning side of where you're going. So I want to encourage you to keep doing what you're doing, keep helping people, and if if we can help in any way, because I know you're a member of the Ketogenic Success Group. If we
Mhm.
can help in some way, just feel free to let us know.
Oh, thanks, Brian. I really, really appreciate it. I've actually been I'm working on setting up a little video studio in my apartment here. Can you see?
Uh huh.
I've got some more lighting equipment coming in, and I'm going to start doing some video, just my own sharing of stuff. I'm going to start interviewing some people in the area that have had success on keto, healthcare providers in my community here that promote it and follow the diet themselves. And so in the weeks coming, I'll probably be sharing those links as well to those videos, and open to suggestions of what people want to hear. And yeah, I have a lot of plans, using the hypnosis, maybe some Periscope as well. I'd love to, do like a daily hypnosis on Periscope, and a lot of entrepreneurial ideas. And it's so rewarding to be able to live, like I'm living this authentic life, and I'm able to help people at the same time. And, my business before, frankly, when I was, I thought I was living my authentic self, I struggled. I really, really struggled, and my business wasn't growing, and financially was having a really hard time. And this whole transformation for me is just opening doors left and right. And, what they say about living your authentic self, and how that makes things happen in your life. So I'm just really extremely grateful and happy in my life.
Well, that's good. I'm glad to hear that. And like I said, I appreciate you coming on the show. I want you to go forth now and continue to be awesome. And like I said, if there's something we can do, please let us know.
Thank you very much, Brian. Thanks for having me on.
All right. We'll talk to you later.
Okay. Thanks. Bye.
You just listened to the Ketovangelist podcast. If you'd like to learn more, that's right, more about the ketogenic diet and lifestyle, I would encourage you to go to ketovangelist.com. It is, and this is an unbiased opinion, it's the best internet website in the history of the entire internet ever. And that includes that one with the dancing hamster a few years ago. I would encourage you to also check out our stuff on social media. Yeah, I stumbled that one. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. We're on the Twitters. We're Ketovangelist all over the place. And we have a group. It's a really neat group. It's a really fun group. It's a really encouraging group. It's not your typical mean group on Facebook. This is a nice one. It's ketogenic success. It's facebook.com/groups/ketogenic success. Go on over, join the group, and start on your path to success. All right, that'll do it for this show. I want to encourage you to all go forth today and continue to be awesome.